Out of the White House, where the President Donald Trump planning to nominate National Security Advisor Mike Waltz to be the UN ambassador. Trump announcing all these changes hours after Waltz and other staffers were reported to be leaving their posts at the National Security Council. And it all, of course, comes after Mike Waltz came under scrutiny for putting together a signal chat that included reporter Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic. In the chat, top national security officials disclosed plans for a military strike on Houthi targets in Yemen. Waltz was present for a cabinet meeting yesterday following President Trump's 100th day in office. And joining us now is Deputy Executive Director of National Security Institute at GMU Law, Martha Miller, to break this all down. Martha, what does this signal to you? Because for a lot of people and insiders, they never really understood why Mike Waltz was in that position to begin with, because he doesn't truly fully align with the MAGA agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the Republican Party, even under President Trump, certainly still has a big tent. If nothing else, there are still plenty of old school Republicans who consider themselves to be Republicans. Mike Waltz obviously is one of them. And, there are areas of alignment in terms of certainly the United States having a strong military posture. That being said, I think Waltz oftentimes has been viewed as too hawkish for the Trump agenda. That being said, I think Trump really likes him. He defended him after Signalgate. And from my perspective, I think he set up this call that in a way that was, in all, from what I can tell, set up and with the right intent. But later on, lots of sensitive details were shared on that chat. But putting that aside, my sense, just from what I understand, is that there might be some personality clashes at the staff level within the White House as well that might have encouraged this appointment. So, and the other interesting thing is, of course, is tapping Rubio to be interim NSA.
Yeah, so a lot to break down there, right? He doesn't just fully fire him and get rid of him following the signal chat debacle. We know that people, influencers, if you will, like Laura Loomer, had been at the White House suggesting that the entire council be fired and all those that were deputies under Mike Waltz go. And some of them did go, but Trump's still keeping him and appointing him to this ambassadorship, which truly, yes, it's a function of the White House, but nothing where you're making like tough decisions, right? And then you've got Marco Rubio now stepping in as interim. What does that signal to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty, number one, it buys them time. Number two, there is precedent for this. Henry Kissinger did serve in both roles for 2 years during the Nixon years, so that is not unheard of. I mean, I think one thing that will do is certainly kind of consolidate power within the White House. The role of the National Security Advisor is to coordinate policy. So, making the Secretary of State also the National Security Advisor, has him also in the role of coordinating. So, I mean, it is a very interesting choice from that perspective. I guess ultimately he could keep doing it. I'm not sure, just based on the statements made today, it doesn't look like that's the intent. But certainly I would imagine they would want some time to select the right person for the role who will mesh well with President Trump.
What about Signal? I mean, this all goes back to the Signal chat. If this first one hadn't happened, and we know obviously of the secondary one from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth with his wife, et cetera, but clearly there's communication that's happening via these channels from people that have classified information, that wield power to some degree, and yet still we see how this transpired. I mean, is this how it would be handled in a traditional administration? Is this just the Trump way, or how do you read into this?
I think the administration where I worked, President Bush, things would have been handled quite differently. Probably the same for subsequent other presidents. I think what's interesting is if you were to compare Mike Waltz's involvement versus the Secretary of Defense's involvement in the Signal chat and the subsequent chat that came to light, I guess about a week ago or so, I think Secretary Hegseth is actually walking on thinner ice than Mike Waltz. And, because there were definitely in that second chat a very high level of questionability in terms of like why certain people should ever have had access to any of that information. I guess what I come back to is this concept that perhaps the Trump administration just doesn't see it as a problem. And, maybe having Mike Waltz go to USUN actually doesn't really have to do with Signalgate at all. At the end of the day, this is a Senate confirmed position, so he will have to go through the scrutiny of the United States Senate. Certainly Republicans will be supportive, but that will be certainly open up a whole can of worms for the Democrats to push hard on Signalgate. And I think, the fact that Mike Waltz is willing to go through that is pretty interesting. That being said, I think Democrats probably like the idea of someone like Mike Waltz in that role, compared to other possible choices.
Yeah, we know that Elise Stefanik had been at least the president's prior choice, but he decided to withdraw that nomination, citing a slim majority in the House and willing to keep that vote in the House. We'll see what happens, but you're right. If that's got to go through Senate confirmation hearings, we know that we'll be hearing a whole lot more of Signalgate under oath nonetheless. Martha, thank you so much for your insight there. Let's